I'm 28 years old and I feel like I've lost my life. Between smart and beautiful, I always thought I was smart. I like myself externally, as well as many others. But being overweight as a teenager put a lot of complexes on me. So when I was 16 years old, and slimmer and luckier friends full of affairs, I pretended that I do not care, and I do not need it. But the pillow did not have time to dry the day of tears. At the same time, there were suitors, but some not so, again compared to the slender, handsome men who surrounded my friends. And in general, I have always been sociable, witty, funny, memorable. But at 16, you want a great and crazy love. So when a friend told me that I liked her acquaintance adult guy, I was elated. But it turned out to be pretty prosaic. The guy was a grown man of 38, naturally married, but he seemed smart, even wise. So a glass of wine and a couple of compliments messed up the miner's mind. I suddenly realized that I was lying on the bed, undressed, crying and asking to be let go. But my words somehow do not have much effect on the adult. He quickly got dressed and threw the money for a cab. All he said was that it was nothing to worry about. A year went by. I still wanted love. And at 17, I met my future husband. I told him the rape story. He seemed to understand and accept it. While we were dating, everything was fine. Love, intimacy, fun, parties, romance. Until I found out that in addition to me, he had one more girl, Yulia, and a lot of unnamed ones, purely for intimacy. But then my pregnancy crept up unnoticed. I had to give up with both nameless girls and Julia. Then came the wedding, the baby, and eternal love. Then a few years later, he told me that Julia and I got pregnant almost simultaneously. Only he married me. He chose me because he loved me, but he sent Julia for an abortion. After the wedding, the scandal started. Suddenly, it occurred to him that I was not a virgin when I got married. And the whole rape story was turned upside down. I became a slut who had drunk and wanted to sleep with a grown man, and now she was playing the victim and generally slept with everyone. The dirt and insults started pouring in all the time. When I couldn't stand it anymore, I threw myself at him and wanted to hit him and shut him up. But they hit me for some reason. This went on for several years. But every quarrel, every fight ended with begging forgiveness and violent passion. Standard situation. But I loved him, believed in his love, because these scandals brought emotions, attention. Plus, he was wildly jealous of me to every post, could go on a binge or sit idle for a month. But love was more important, until his mother bought him a car. The car. That's who I blame for our divorce, because a car has to pay for itself. That's why you have to taxi at night. The nights were accompanied by calls from my regular customers, but the scandals disappeared, that is, and the attention disappeared. We drifted apart and started throwing tantrums at each other over some stupid domestic issue. I didn't feel like he was with someone yet, but I knew it was coming, that he liked the nightlife, the easy dating and the fun, tipsy women. And one day he picked me up from work, and on the way he started cursing at some driver who, in my husband's opinion, was driving the wrong way. And I realized I was insanely tired and told him I was filing for divorce. He didn't believe me. And I somehow so quickly in 3 days filed for divorce and alimony, packed up his stuff and kicked him out of the apartment. And I also started flirting with the guy at work, just to make sure I didn't change my mind, because in 7 years of marriage there was not even a thought of cheating. My husband suffered. He followed me, came to me, called me, cried, begged me, shouted something about, "We can't keep what we have and we can't keep what we've lost." Then he admitted that he actually considered me his property and did not think that I would ever leave him. I quickly realized all the advantages of a free life. It turned out that I was attractive, that there were a lot of men around, that I could easily go with friends to a bar or club, that I could cope with paying the mortgage and raising a child, that I could live on my own and not depend on anyone. The disadvantages came later. Many men were happy that I had an apartment, that I provided for myself, that I could pay for myself, and for him too. Why not? Some were quite serious, offered to marry me right away, but they did not really catch on. Those who liked me thought I was not very suitable for them, a divorcee with a child and a mortgage. And the worst part was that with none of them, though there weren't as many as you might think, not once was I able to enjoy intimacy. Only my husband knew what I liked and how I liked it. Only he made me feel good. That said, he kept coming back and asking me not to make mistakes, not to look for anyone, and to come back to him. And I started to come back. But my husband did not waste his time either. He lived with one woman, then he dated another, then he just slept with a third. And most often all at the same time. That is, I ended all my relationships, cut off all communication, believing that everything will work out because we still love each other. And he lived one night at my place, one day at another's, the next night at a third. Every scandal ended with insults, accusations that I divorced myself in order to bounce around and get high on men. So we came and went very, very many times until he had a young girl of 18. She resembled me in appearance, was also an excellent student, even studied at the same school as me, was cheerful and calm, and a virgin, perfect for him. What more does a 30-year-old man need? A girl who hasn't seen anything, knows nothing, and can't do anything. And he's in front of her, so mature, so experienced, so cool. He even started to think about getting married, only he still couldn't let go of all his one-night stands and affection for his ex-wife. I also had a seemingly very serious and thorough man. He's not handsome, but he said that he would make repairs in my apartment, pay my loans, and buy me a car. And he also wants children and to get married. It is desirable to quickly, because as soon as he saw me, he realized that I was his destiny. He was divorced. Before him I dated only single guys. My son from my first marriage. He has his own business, he fully supports his son. But his wife does not let me see him for some reason. She is a mean woman. Then the ring happened, the proposal and a trip to the sea. And now I'm pregnant again. Before that I had to quit my favorite high-paying job, and at the new place I got half as much. I got into loans. But my man promised to work it all out. Except now, with the business getting better, he owes him a lot of money, but for some reason he won't pay it back. Then he started kind of renovating, replaced the ceiling and trashed everything else. That was the end of the money. When I told him I needed to pay the loan, he made round eyes and said that we had just paid last month, there was no money, and you kind of find it yourself, and when they pay back the debt, I'll pay it all. Then the court summons started coming, and it turned out that he had a huge alimony debt. And it was not everyone owed him, but he owed everyone. He was hiding at my house. They took away his car for debts. The whole thing was a total mess. And when I asked what was going on and why he was lying and why, he again pretended that he did not understand anything, that I was stupid, and in general all is well. And he would do anything for me and for the future child. But even that is not the main thing. After all, any circumstances can be handled if people have feelings. But I never had any. Even before these problems, I realized that I would not love him. He really pisses me off, and I will not live with him. And then everything just fell into place. I kicked him out. It was too late to have an abortion. I decided to have a baby. The more I thought I would get maternity capital, pay off the mortgage, and somehow cope. All this time we kept in touch with my ex-husband. We had grown up, wised up, and were both in more or less permanent relationships. We talked it over and decided that since we couldn't be without each other anyway, we would be lovers, without mutual claims and reproaches. Of course, it did not always work out without complaints, but we were fine. And then I found myself pregnant, alone, with a lot of problems and credits. Things did not work out with a young girl. Almost 2 years wasted. First he cheated on her, and she stayed home and waited. And when he realized it was time to get married, the girl flipped out and said she didn't need it. She was still young, and he was already bald at 32, alimony man and womanizer. And that's when he and I got another wave of love. It was overwhelming. He practically returned to the family, began to sleep over every night. We spent time together. It's all pretty covert and secret because I didn't want anyone to say that I was divorced, fattened up, had a baby, and brought it to my ex-husband. And he would never raise someone else's. So initially there was no goal of finally getting back together. We just had a good time with each other. We were relaxed. We learned to talk to each other. Of course we expressed our grievances and reproaches, but it never came to a scandal. We learned to do without them. So he slept and ate and slept, but he was temporarily short of work and I got maternity leave. So I gassed up his car, paid his fines, got him insurance, and I got him a phone loan. He said he'd pay it all back and I didn't feel bad about it. It was love. When we talked again, I told him that I understood that he needed to build his life, get married, and settle down. But I only asked him to tell me if he was seeing someone else. I only asked him to tell me if he had someone else, because I didn't want to lie to anyone, and he needed to learn to live his life without lying. But as usual, it was different. I had noticed before in his phone correspondence with a girl, but he said that it was an old acquaintance of his, the same Julia from the past, whom he sent for an abortion before we were married. That she had a husband and 3 kids, that they just happened to see each other, and now they talk about life a couple of times a month. Of course, it made me angry, although I have no right to make any complaints to him because in a couple of weeks I have a baby from another man. And he started disappearing, coming less often, communicating less, hiding his phone and running away at every call. I asked, "Tell me honestly, if someone showed up, I'll step aside because I don't want to play your games." He assured me that no, there is no one. He just moonlighting on the job, so very tired, falls asleep early and things like that. Until one day he had a drink and stayed the night. The whole night he was telling me how much he loved me, wanted me, how good he felt with me. And in the morning I found in my phone a correspondence with the very Yulia. Very intimate, romantic, all with love. I asked him to tell the truth, but he said nothing, only that he did not have to answer me. I couldn't stand it and called Julia, and it turned out that they were in love, only she had no children, no husband, and there had never been an abortion. It was just then she found out that she was not alone with him. He also cried and begged her to come back, swore his love and fidelity. But she was tougher than I was and cut everything short. And now that they had met as adults, she decided to try again. After all, he said he was married, with his wife rarely communicates and only about his daughter. And he will make it up to her. He will say that she is an inadequate ex-wife, who was abandoned by a man who is pregnant, who wants to hang this child on him and bring him back, and generally does him harm because her life is not going well. I know it's happened before, it just hurts so much right now. Why do you have to build your relationship on my bones? I feel used. I spent a lot of money on him, and this is so he could drive Julia around in his car, and I could have paid off one of my loans or bought something for my daughter or for my unborn child. Opened the door to him at any time, helped him, listened to him, slept with him, was very comfortable and only asked to tell the truth, but even that didn't turn out to be worthy. I thought no one wanted me even before that. 28 years old, 2 children from different men who, why? But it was my own fault. I believed in fairy tales. And now she's trampled. I don't know how to get out of it. In general, now I think that all 11 years that we know him were solid lies. No one ever chose me out of great love. That girl just left him, and out of despair and spite he decided to marry me. And now he's awakened old feelings. And he can't even have a human conversation and get it over with. He hangs up on me. It hurts. A lot. But it's probably my fault. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video if you like it. Also put a bell so you don't miss new videos. See you soon.